Hello,
Hi.
welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Kelly. I work in disability management on the Berkeley campus. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor, and my co-host will introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Dr. Derek Coates, and I work at UC Berkeley in the Office of Disability Access and Compliance, and I'm the manager of ADA Program Access. I've been with the university for 22 years now.
I need to work on my intro. Okay. And today this is our fledgling, right? Podcast celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Woohoo!
Indeed.
And labor of love. And we're super excited to have a guest today. Jill is joining us, and she is going to give us just a little bit of a perspective about her own invisible disability. This is our Invisible Disability podcast, and we're going to be coming up with a name for it soon. And we may go ahead and post something to have some people vote on a name. What will we call this? But for now, I imagine it's what I wish people knew about my disability. So, Jill, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Great. So, with regard to National Disability Employment Awareness Month and I think October's is also just National Disabilities Month, right? We're excited to do this. We're going to try to post some of these podcasts in rapid succession, but we're really excited to hear from you. I know that I had sent you a couple of questions, but just tell me just a little bit about yourself. Let's warm up a little bit.
Sure. So, I have hearing loss as my invisible disability. And I think this hearing loss, from my current recent understanding, may have been with me my entire life. And so I was not aware that I had hearing loss until, probably in the last 10 years, people close to me have said, I don't think you hear me, or you're saying ha and ah, and maybe I'm twisting the words a little bit because I actually hear something different from what they're saying that they said. And it was really frustrating and challenging. And, in this particular situation, it wasn't a positive experience. It brought up a lot of relationship conflict. And it also made me feel lost and not happy and scared, that maybe I wasn't hearing everything and not really wanting to face it, right? Wanting to try to continue to mask, but also knowing like maybe I really can't hear everything. And what do I do?
Yeah, thank you for being so open about that. Um, in your work environment, do you believe that your invisible disability impacts you or your work responsibility or role?
At the moment, I am working remotely, and I've also, prior to this, I worked in a private office in the most recent years. So I was able to close the door and increase the volume using, you know, Zoom. Like for a while, we had a former technology that was Ready Talk that was through the phone, and I would just put it on speaker and I would, increase the volume. I also had access to a headphone at work if I wanted to do that. So, you know, the times where I have found that it's impacted me is when I've had to go into in person meetings, and these could be large or small. And depending on the particular meeting and the players in the meeting, it can present itself. It's one of those things where a larger meeting is usually projected, right? Somebody uses a microphone, and I tend to be fine when that happens. It is in those smaller size meetings, like maybe 10 or 15 people in the room. I find that if somebody is further away from me and they don't use projection or they have a mask on, or there may be a certain tone, because what I've understood about my hearing loss is I'm in range on some tones. I don't know all the technical but then I have this gap. So if somebody talks in that gap, I may hear them, but I don't comprehend exactly everything they're saying. So what I do is I either guess correctly or incorrectly, or have to ask them to repeat themselves, but that doesn't always help, because if I'm not close to them, I can't still hear them. So, you know, using technology, like having a meeting where it could be live and then we could also have the opportunity to have transcription, is really, really helpful. So I could imagine that, in the past, and there was a lot that I was missing, but in my daily work now, with the usually being able to use technology, I'm able to get by pretty well.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. You were speaking about modulation and tones, and that's super important in terms of what you can perceive. Do you do you imagine a scenario, say for example, in an in-person meeting that might be more assistive to you? What kind of strategies would like to employ that would assist you when you're in that small group or maybe a larger group?
Well, me personally being able to control, like where I sit in the room, helps. It's still a stigma for me to admit that I have hearing loss, and I never know when it's going to present itself. So I'm not comfortable at this point really telling a lot of people that I have hearing loss. And so, you know, if there was options, that would make it for me not to have to stand out. Like maybe, unfortunately, it's hard to design rooms, but um, it's just hard to maybe be the only one in the room that has to ask maybe for somebody to repeat. Or so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Oh, that's completely.
hard. It's hard to be the only one
I
sometimes.
understand. I understand. With an invisible disability, I would imagine that you're likely not the only one. We don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. Have you ever had a situation or an experience where you felt in some way compelled or coerced into disclosing what your disability might be?
Yeah, there have been meetings where I've had to respond in real time, right? So I'm in the meeting and I'm asked to a follow-up question on something that somebody said, and I really didn't really clearly understand or hear what that other person said. And I will have to say, could you repeat that? And it's somewhat embarrassing to have to do that, but you know, I've had to tell trusted colleagues at work that, could you ping me, or, I didn't quite hear that. And we piggyback on each other. Like, so I've told them that, sometimes I can't hear. So if you could help me, if we're in the meeting together, maybe start it and like rephrase the question, and that would help me to be able to answer. But it can be challenging depending on the situation and who is in the meeting.
Yes. For sure. I would imagine that it would be challenging for most people, with or without a hearing loss, to understand what's going on if there's a lot of crosstalk perhaps in the meeting, or like you said, someone's volume is occluded because they were wearing a mask or some other sort of thing, because masks are our life now, right? Um, but maybe some strategies around meeting hygiene would be really good. I've noticed even in my own interactions when I'm dealing with family members, if their back is turned to me, I don't hear them as clearly. And I'm not proposing that I have hearing loss. I think people like to mumble in my absence. But if I tell them to look my way, I do find that I get more contextually
Mhm.
when I'm looking at them. Now, admittedly, I was training to be a sign language interpreter, so I do zone in on people's mouths. But that's that's really interesting um, in terms of dynamic where we are. What we need, if it were something tangible, right? Something, oh, I need a pen or I need a fork or I need this. We don't have any qualms about asking for it, but that stigma holds us back. And I'm glad you shared that because that's why we're here. We're here not to say, okay, we're going to out you, Jill, and people are going to know. No, we're here to help each other, to foster self-advocacy, to look at some resources and some ideas as a community. And so I'm super, super excited about this venture. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm hoping that you might want to stick around, philosophically, to help us build upon this and make this a community where we can find what we need in terms of resources, camaraderie, and the like.
Absolutely. There is something that I reflected on recently when I was young, when I was in elementary school. For example, I had a similar situation than what I'm experiencing now in with my hearing loss, is that I couldn't see the chalkboard at the time. Well, now they have whiteboards, but chalkboards back then. um, and so I would often ask my desk mate or whatever who was sitting at my table, when the teacher would put something on the board, like, I can't read that. I can't see that. And they said, you need glasses. And at that time, I was very cognizant of, you know, culture and everything, all four eyes. I don't want to be four eyes. I don't want glasses. I didn't want anybody to know. I relied on my friend to help me out. But eventually I did, go to a doctor and I got diagnosed with being nearsighted and I got glasses. And then soon after that, I got contacts. And the contacts were my answer, right? Because I didn't have to wear the glasses, it didn't have to be obvious. And then, fast forward now, there's so many people that have contacts and glasses that it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to wear glasses. And sometimes it's a fashion statement. And my niece recently got glasses and she wore them proudly. And now she has some contacts and she goes back and forth. But I don't see a lot of people wearing hearing aids at my age. Most people that I see that are wearing hearing aids are grandparents and they're, in their 80s, and that is a barrier for me personally. Like, it's hard when I feel like I'm the only one at my age, but I know I'm not, because I recently heard from some friends that they're also experiencing hearing loss, but it's hard to come to terms with that in society, at least for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Dr. Coates, do you have any questions or?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to think about what you've learned over the years and in terms of living with this that you think may assist someone else who experiences something similar or the same thing. Are there any, is there anything that you would want to tell them?
Well, you know, I think that it's important to recognize that you're not the only one and that there's a long way to go in society for planning like universal design and just having it easier for us with those with hearing loss,
Mm.
that it's a journey, but I do feel like there is a large number of people that are masking it like me, and that we should speak up and we should not allow ourselves to miss out, and we should be confident in coming forward because that's how change is impacted. And being silent and you know missing out on things is not good.
And then I'm going to change the question and switch it the other direction. What would you want to teach others about it?
That it's hard being somebody with hearing loss. It's hard to be different. It's hard to think about putting on a hearing aid that's visible to others, that shows that you have some sort of disability or impairment, in that perception that maybe you're different, that it is a struggle. Maybe I've learned through the years that this is the way things are. I mean, I'm going to get a hearing aid soon, and I'm going to see if that really changes things. I don't know what I don't know. Um, but I will say that I'm becoming more confident in talking about it and putting it out there.
Mm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's great work. We get to this place, what is it called? We're all striving for self-actualization, right? If we're talking about the psychology models, and I might be going way off the rails here, but we have to get to a place in our individual lives where we are good with who we are, where we are, and what we're about. And if we're not good with it, we do something about it. And so, I applaud you. You're doing the hard work and giving us some nuggets to take away from it. So I really do appreciate the effort that you've brought to this table today. I know that it was difficult because we've had side conversation, but the group, the universal group, really, really appreciates this from you, and it is time. It is time. So, Dr. Coates, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much for being here and for sharing your story. And I think that um, it's time to start to celebrate the disability and switch the vernacular on things. And I think that one of the ways that we can do that is sort of try our best to create an inclusive culture, to create inclusive meetings. And thank you for moving us forward in our understanding of what it's like to experience a disability and what it's like to think about what others think and share and give us a glimpse into that world, as well as demonstrate the courage that it takes to move forward and not give up and keep moving forward and try to self-actualize. So thank you.
Thank you both.
Well,
Mm.
we're going to wrap this session. This is not the end, though. We're going to be doing this a bit. Our goal is to post something during this month of October 2025. I'm going to put a timestamp here because in the future, this is going to look different. And Jill, you can say, I knew you when. I knew you when this was an infant child thought. We're not infants, but it was a baby thought. And now we're here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much to my co-host, Dr. Coates. Thank you for pushing me in this direction. And we know the backstory. We might tell y'all about it later. But for now, we're gonna say bye-bye.
And thank you for sharing the time with us.